morning, everybody. All right, so welcome to day 2 of the Summa Contra Gentiles, Cup of Jonah. So grab a cup of Joe and enjoy. So chapter 2. So remember yesterday in chapter 1, we asked the question, what is wisdom? What is a wise man? Etc. So flowing from that, chapter 2, the author asks, the title of chapter 2 is The Author's Intention in the Present Work. So he's kind of setting out his motivation, which I've already kind of reiterated for you guys before, but here we go, in his words. Among all human pursuits, the pursuit of wisdom is more perfect, more noble, more useful, and more full of joy. It is more perfect because insofar as a man gives himself to the pursuit of wisdom, so far does he even now have some share in true beatitude. And so, as a wise man has said, blessed is the man that shall continue in wisdom. It is more noble because through this pursuit, man especially approaches to a likeness to God who made all things in wisdom. And since likeness is the cause of love, the pursuit of wisdom especially joins man to God in friendship. This is why it is said of wisdom that she is an infinite treasure to men, which they that use become friends of God. It is more useful because through wisdom we arrive at the kingdom of immortality, for the desire of wisdom bringeth to the everlasting kingdom. It is more full of joy because her conversation hath no bitterness, nor her company any tediousness, but joy and gladness. That was from the Book of Wisdom. And so in the name of the divine mercy, I have the confidence to embark upon the work of a wise man, even though this may surpass my powers, and I have set myself to the task of making known as far as my limited powers will allow, the truth that the Catholic faith professes, and of setting aside the errors that are opposed to it. To use the words of Hilary, I am aware that I owe this to God as the chief duty of my life, that my every word and sense may speak of him. So interesting, it's harking back a little bit to what he talked about before, where the office of the wise man is not only to set out the truth, but to oppose errors, right? To proceed against individual errors, however, is a difficult business, and this is for two reasons. In the first place, it is difficult because the sacrilegious remarks of individual men who have erred are not so well known to us that we may use what they say as the basis of proceeding to a refutation of their errors. This is indeed the method that the ancient doctors of the Church used in refutation of the errors of the Gentiles, for they could know the positions taken by the Gentiles since they themselves had been Gentiles, or at least had lived among the Gentiles and had been instructed in their teaching. In the second place, it is difficult because some of them, such as the Mohammedans and the pagans, do not agree with us in accepting the authority of any scripture, by which they may be convinced of their error. Thus, against the Jews we are able to argue by means of the Old Testament, while against heretics we are able to argue also by means of the New Testament. But the Mohammedans and the pagans accept neither one nor the other. We must therefore have recourse to natural reason, to which all men are forced to give their assent. However, it is true in divine matters that natural reason has its failings. Now, while we are investigating some given truth, we shall also show that what errors are set aside by it, and we shall likewise show how the truth that we come to know by demonstration is in accord with the Christian religion. Okay, so this is actually really interesting. So that's the end of chapter 2 already. Now, what's really interesting about this is, okay, so we've talked before about how the scholastic model and Aquinas himself, they call it a monoduxio, right? So instead of if you want someone to understand your opinion or the truth about something as you see it, when you don't want to just yell at them from across the room, you want to walk across the room, take them by the hand and lead them to the truth, right? Just shouting the truth from the rooftops doesn't do anybody any good. You have to kind of find common ground with that person and walk with them to build on the truths they already have. It's like in the truth, as truthers, so called, right? Which, I don't like the label either, but just to like yell different scientific facts that you feel contradict the narrative. Yeah, there we go. I feel like I've heard this type of thing long before. Yep. So, it's not good to just like yell scientific facts at somebody, or, conspiracy, anything that goes in line with the conspiracy that you're aware of being true or whatever. Anyways, right? So you can't just like beat someone over the head who doesn't see it. So you have to lead someone by the hand. So essentially what he's saying in here is, look, as a Catholic, that's the perspective he's writing from. He's like, I have arguments with the Old Testament in common with the Jews. I have the New Testament in common with non-Catholic Christians, or heretics, as they called them back then, etc. He's like, but there's nothing to talk about other than reason, which is, as you remember, that's why I told you I picked this book, is because this book discusses all the truths that we could discuss and unpacks them from a perspective of just simply reason. Now, another thing you'll notice in here, which is fascinating, is he says that back in the day, the doctors of the church and like some of these old Christians, they actually were used to be heretics, etc. So they kind of knew the arguments. There's another fascinating piece of information about the times that St. Thomas was living in. There actually weren't any prevalent. Almost the entire world that was Christian was Catholic, and there weren't any prevailing heresies at the time. So he comes from a place of real serenity, in the sense that everybody who bought the premise, so to speak, or who believed in the incarnation and in Christianity, they were all of one faith, literally, on the earth. There wasn't any of these variations that we see today. So that's a beautiful and interesting perspective. And this is why he's able, particularly throughout history, he has such a unique and powerful perspective, because oftentimes, like, when we find ourselves in a time that's challenged by specific errors, we find ourselves inclined to connect things that we're discussing back to just kind of add fuel to that belief and reinforce that, right? Like today, for example, a lot of times people would bring into conversation, what a woman is, something as a joke, but also like, okay, guys, come on, we know this for sure, right? Or, for those of us in the phone booth community, a lot of us understand the biblical cosmology is true. And so a lot of times we'll encounter something in life and we'll bring it back to that, because for us, that's such an important truth. Okay. But the serenity that we would have if those truths weren't being challenged, we wouldn't need to focus on one or the other truth. We could just peacefully unpack and rejoice in the truths of the reality around us without having in the back of our mind one particular error that is prevalent in our day, right? So that's one of the things I want you to keep in the back of your mind when we go through this book, is the perspective is really, it's a non-combative, just a very peaceful perspective. Morning, Amy. The music is actually, I can send you a copy. Actually, it's AI generated. So, but yeah, I have this. There's music actually that's from my family lineage, old lute music, and so it's inspired by that. It's all inspired by like medieval lute sonatas. So, but anyhow, so. I want you to remember that as we go through this, because that's something that's always impressed me with Thomas, is his neutrality, in the sense that he's not entrenched trying to prove a point over and over and over again. So I think it's refreshing. So it's interesting. I want to kind of give you guys a teaser. So moving forward, looking forward to tomorrow and the following days, he's going to talk about how do we know divine truths. or the ways in which divine truths or truths about God are known to us. And then there's truths about God that we can understand through natural reason, but then there's also truths about God that we couldn't know by natural reason but have to be revealed, right? Yes, Ted, good call. Does that mean we shouldn't run into churches screaming about ICE? Yeah, I think that's probably good counsel, Ted. But yeah, so of the truths, there's truths that are alleged or that are revealed, and if you're not there, alleged to be revealed, right? That we could access and figure out on our own, like Aristotle did many of these. And there's some things that go beyond reason that even Aristotle, with his intellect, couldn't get to. So that's the questions coming up is he's gonna be like, all right, well, does it even make sense that God would reveal things that were beyond our natural reason? Does it make sense that God would reveal things that we actually could figure out on our own without any help that, Aristotle had figured out, for example, right? So it's very interesting series of questions that all flows from this wisdom and pursuit of wisdom, but parting from natural reason, as we discussed. So beautiful. So some chapters like this one will be a little bit shorter, like today. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about the reading today, kind of about leading someone by the hand and kind of points in common and his explanation for why this book is written? Got a couple more minutes before we wrap up for today. It is a little bit of a shorter chapter today as well. So I hope you guys all have your cup of Jonah. I got to get a mug that says cup of Jonah. Actually, that's what I got to do. So, okay, give it a couple more seconds because I know there's a delay in the chat. So a couple more seconds before we wrap up here today. But it's neat. Yeah, I often wonder what it would have been like to live in a world where I wonder where it was about. I often wonder what it would feel like to live in a world where a majority of the people across all of Europe or all of the West had one creed, had one belief system, and one culture, more or less, that permeated. What a paradise would that be, huh? Yeah, it is worded really well. I think you guys will find as well that as we get deeper into the book, it's not just within each chapter, which is like communicates very succinctly like one concept or idea. The chapters so beautifully flow concept to concept, one into the other, and you can see he was a master teacher. It's so ordered. Amy, late again, typical woman. I love it. Yeah, it's all right. We love you. That's the nice thing about Rewind. So you guys will see that order and how things so peacefully flow, and logically it's like, oh yeah, why didn't I think that's the, yeah, of course that's the next question, of course that's the next chapter. So it's pretty cool. So I know we're just barely scratching the surface of the book here, but I'm excited, and I really appreciate you guys joining me here. Let's see, the way he describes understanding someone else's perspective to be able to argue to reach them. It's true. And I love that phrase, monoduxio, that image of leading someone by the hand. And, we talk about someone's frame of reference, right? Like if you present someone with an idea that's outside of their frame of reference, then it's next to impossible for them to fit it into their worldview or fit it into or understand it enough to fit it into their perspective on life, on the world. So there has to be something of a shift of their frame of reference little by little through life or whatever else before they'll be disposed to actually be able to consider the thought being presented. So I was just speaking with sharing with my folks last week, that, when I was first like kind of learning a lot of this stuff, and, you get zealous for the truth. And what he talks about is like the truth is pursuit of wisdom is pleasure. That's in the very beginning of this chapter. Remember, he said, that it's like heaven on earth, that beatitude on earth already. So you feel like that there's that joy of the pursuit of wisdom. And I think we've all had that experience, where you just have that, you're filled with joy when you learn a new truth, when you discover a new truth that you just know in your bones, in your soul, that that's true, a truth that you just discovered or understood. And that joy is just incredible. And so in that zeal for that joy, I remember, I would really like insist with my mom or somebody else and kind of like argue and be like, no, no, don't you see it? Don't you see it? And it's like, if our Lord, if the Creator, if God is patient with us in our lives, I mean, how long has it taken me to understand certain truths? How many decades have I not understood fairly simple things that for most of history people understood, and that, like, I'm like, oh, at 35 years old, I'm like, oh, imagine that. Now I get it, right? And so, like, if God was that patient with me, shouldn't I be that patient with the people in my life around me and just continue to show them gently what the truth is, or what I've understood the truth to be, and give them that opportunity to peacefully find it themselves and to peacefully understand it when they're ready. Amy, I was thinking about yesterday's episode and teachers, spiritual teachers especially. Do you think that God sends us people that will lead us toward him? Absolutely. So one of my favorite images for this, Amy, is a chess match. Okay. I was just playing chess yesterday with Vince, but okay, so this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is originally the idea for this analogy was from Teresa of Avila. But the idea that, like, okay, in a chess game, if you move too quickly to check the king before all your pieces are set up, then you might lose the opportunity for checkmate because they might get away, right? But oftentimes, like, if I'm just a little pawn in this person's relationship with God, the chess game, and he just wants me to move forward and cover this one little square, I've just showed them or shared with them this little truth that I've been shown, and I just pass it on. That's the little square that I'm supposed to be guarding for them, right? So to speak. And, there's a bishop, there's the queen, there's other pawns, there's a rook or two, like, there's a lot of other pieces in this person's life that God has brought to bear in their life to win over their heart, to conquest their heart, to lead them into love with him, to lead them to their salvation, where they believe and have that relationship with him, to, like, checkmate their heart, so to speak, right? So, but if I'm this overzealous little pawn and I just keep pushing forward, now I'm out of position, right? Now I don't fit into the overall plan if I'm pushing my timing and my will. So I need to just have patience and trust. But yeah, so indirectly, so that's actually a beautiful question, Amy, because it kind of builds on what I was saying about having patience. So I have to be patient as a little pawn, but that implies that God is bringing other chess pieces to bear in this person's life to help them see the truth. Again, the first time I heard certain truths about the world we live in, or about God, was years before I actually was of the frame of mind and heart and openness of heart to actually embrace those truths, or even to consider them being true. So I think it's beautiful, because when we look at our own past and how long it's taken us to get somewhere sometimes, like, what about somebody else? What if they're just 6 months away? And what if by me pushing, it turns them off, and now they're like, those God freaks always pushing the truth. Get out of here, What have I done? I've just actually undermined my own heart for them, because the only reason most of us push for that is because, like Thomas was just saying, there's a lot of joy that comes with the truth, with knowing and understanding the truth. There's a joy. It's paradise on earth already. And we want that for the people that we care about. Yeah. No, I agree with you, Amy. That's exactly. Not to overwhelm them, not even with good, because as an old spiritual director of mine said years and years ago, he said, the right decision or action at the wrong time is the wrong decision or action. So the right choice at the wrong time is the wrong choice. So I think that's probably a good way, a good thought to wrap up on with today. So let's be patient with the people we love. God is. Let's make the right choice of continuing to share with them the truth and be open and share our joy more than anything else, because that's what's going to attract people to the truth, rather than us hitting them over the head with arguments to convince them of something. Let's just start by sharing the joy that the truths that we've discovered give us, and let them come to us to find out what that joy is. And then we can lead them by the hand, because they'll be receptive. We're not putting someone in an arm brace or an arm bar and pulling them across the room. It's not a dragging by the hand or by the arm. It's a leading by the hand, right? So just share the joy, and let's be patient and understand that we're just one piece in this chessboard, on this chess game, that each of us are engaged in the chess game with the Lord. And I know I got a long way to go myself. I know the Lord is still trying to win my heart over in certain respects as well. So yes, exactly, Ted. Let them see how happy you are, and let them want to know how to get to that. In fact, I think St. Paul says, always be prepared to give an explanation for the joy in you. So, love you guys. Thanks for joining me this morning. I'll see you tomorrow for a cup of Jonah. God bless.